In the last video we finished up this login screen for our Fasetto Word chat application. We added this nice sliding animation, and then we've also got the email and the password box done, and clicking this currently just slides it out as an example. I was going to move on to page navigation to go to different pages, but I think what we should first do is actually stop and finish the view model binding properly. So everything going forward will be bound to view models. So right now these are doing nothing. So the first thing we want to do is need to update this base page, because every page is going to be bound to a view model. We are going to change this base page to a generic class. Now I'm jumping over a little bit here because everybody wants the WPF videos, so I'm going to breeze over effectively generic classes and expressions and a few things, and then go back, and the next few videos are going to explain in detail, you know, what generic classes are and some of the things that are more advanced that I'm going to breeze over. So a generic class, in short, we do these angle brackets, we give it a name of anything we want, in this case VM for view model. We just made that up, and now inside this class we can use that. So we can now make a variable of type VM, which is completely unknown. It's just we haven't told it what it is, but we can now use it inside the class, and we can call this view model. So we'll make a property for that. The view model associated with this page, and now in the constructor we can set that up as our data context automatically, and we will want to, for now, create, in fact that's not quite right, let's just change this to a private member VM called mViewModel. That's the same as that. And then here we want to change it from get to return the view model. But on set, I want to first make sure it's changed. So if it hasn't, then just do nothing. Otherwise, we want to update the value. What's that complete about? Well, for one, we want to define, at least tell this VM of a type that it's going to be. So we do where VM colon, and it's going to always be a base view model because it's expected to be a view model. There we go. Now we can compare them. We also want to, once we've got a new view model, we want to set the data context to the view model. So effectively that's what we're doing right now, but manually. So this is now an automatic way of, whenever we just set the view model via this generic input, it becomes the data context of that page. So again, I'll explain more about generics in another video. I just don't want to waste this video going over just generics and not doing any WPF. And then by default, when we construct the page, we want to make a new view model. So just new VM, and that's going to complain as well. We need to tell it that we can new it. So you'll see I'm having to effectively tell the class a little bit about VM, so it can do things like make a new, make a new VM, because it might be a struct or an int or something that can't be newed. So we're telling it that it can be newed. We're also telling it can be a base view model. Well, it has to be a base view model or above. So we've now made a private member for it. When we set the public property, it sets it and also sets the data context. And then in the constructor, by default, we're going to set, oh, that's wrong. Let's stop view model equals that, and then that'll do it. Create a default view model. So when you just make a new page, it's going to be like doing, say, new login view model, which we're going to create. And then you can always override that and set it afterwards if you wanted to do like restoring from, cached view models to remember the username or things like that. But for now, that's going to get us a view model. in the base view model. And now this page is going to break. It hasn't done yet, but it will. There we go. So now we've got to tell this base page, it's no longer just a base page. We do it behind here first, which is easier. You can see now a base page, it can't just be a base page, we need to tell it about the view model. So to do that, we need to actually make the view model. So let's make a new, in fact, let's just copy and paste this one. Login view model. Open this up. Expand everything. If you want to expand or collapse everything, Control A selects everything. Control and then M for mother. MM twice will collapse everything. And then MM again will expand everything. So if I'm doing a new class and I've copy and pasted, what I first do is select all, MM to close, MM to open everything, so that now everything's expanded and I can quickly whiz through and delete what's not needed and clean up things. So I just delete that, rename this to login view model for a login screen. And then we'll delete these. We'll come back and add them in a moment, but basically just get rid of everything. Just keep the regions. Keep one command because we know we're going to need one. This is a login view model. Don't want anything in there. We want to create one command, which will be the login one we'll come back to. Clean everything else up. And there's no private helpers. So the login view model is now blank. We might as well just fill this out because it's nice and easy. So the login view model, we need to bind to the login page. So we need an email, a password, and a login action in order to, do something on click. So we'll have public string email of the user. Now the password will get fun. This will be a secure string, so you never want to store strings in memory. Secure strings are okay. So let's read this. Represents the text. It should be confidential. The text is encrypted for privacy when being used and deleted from computer memory when no longer needed. So we're okay to use a secure string to store the password. We still want to be super careful with anything to do with the password. You want to keep it in memory as short as possible. But a secure string is encrypted, so it's fine. It's if somebody tries to inject into your applications running memory and extract the password, this is written by Microsoft, so it's it's secure. It's going to keep that password safe. But you'll find the issue in a minute is binding to this, as we already know with the password box. You can't bind to the password, so I'll show you how to get around that in a minute. There's the two properties. We want a command now called login command for when the button's clicked to log in. A command to log in. In the constructor we want to make that, and in order to get around this password issue that you can't bind to, so this won't be set, what we're going to do is when we click the login button, we're going to have the view pass in the secure password at that point in time in memory. So this relay command that we made, even though when you execute you can have a parameter, we don't pass it into the action. So we just want to copy and paste the relay command and just call it relay parameterized command. Open that. Control A MM to open everything. Change this to parameterized command. Pretty much everything stays the same. The action is now going to have an object, the parameter passed in. That'll stay the same. The constructor will match to pass a parameter to the action, and then the execute will pass that parameter along. So all we've done is passed along the parameter. So that now when we go to our login command, we can change this to a parameterized command, and in here then we'd have the parameter given to us, and here we want to call our function, which will be asynchronous as well. So add async there, await here, and a login function here. Control dot to create the method. Move that out of there, plonk it there, make it public. We'll do async in a moment. Attempts to log the user in. And this will be the secure string passed in from the view for the user's password. So this will make a lot more sense in a moment when it all comes together. But all we've done is created a command which we created before. So a command is, just think of it as a function in a view model almost. The view models shouldn't just have the functions called. This shouldn't just be called. What we should do is in the login page, this button, where we've got this click, we don't want that. That's an old way of doing things. Instead, you want a command. And the command we can now bind to our login command. And that will then go to this login command. This login command will effectively be a relay parameterized command, which is nothing more than a wrapper we made to call an action. So effectively, it means that when this login command gets clicked or run by the button, all it does is run this lambda, which effectively just runs this action. So the whole thing just boils down to you bind a button, you bind this command to a buttons command, and then when that button gets clicked, it goes into here, it gets to here, because this is an I command, and when it runs execute, we call the action, which is the thing we passed in the constructor, which is this thing here, which just calls the login. So the whole thing, you click the button and effectively you hit this function. That's all it's doing. It's just the way you do it in view models. So any action, anything you want to run as a function, if you will, it's basically a command. The thing with commands is you're not meant to pass anything into them. So you can see there's nothing, a command is just a command. There's the one thing you can pass in, and that's a parameter. And that's like a workaround, if you will. You should never really rely on passing parameters, but in this instance, for getting around like the password box issue, this is going to be the solution. So as well as the login command, we're expecting a parameter to be given, and that needs to be a secure string so that we can then set this password up. In fact, you wouldn't even technically need this password on the view model because you can't bind to it anyway. So we can get rid of that. We've got no privates on here. And then in the login, we will do, because I want to simulate the login happening, for now let's just do await task.delay, and you'll see again in a moment. Just do half a second delay for now. We now need to pass that parameter in when we click, so let's close that. So we did here button command. We also want to now do command parameter, and for that we need this password box's secure password. So first we need to name this password box, so we'll just call it password text. Then the command parameter we can now bind, and what we'll do is bind to an element name of password text, which is found, and the property is secure password. So the command parameter will become the secure password of the password text when we click login command. So I don't know whether we can run this yet, I don't think it'll build, but we'll run this in a moment, and you'll see in here then we could do var password, and it'll still be secured. Well, in fact we can just look at parameter when we get to there. So let's just get this building and I'll show you that happening. Base view model, where were we? We don't want that anymore. Click. So the login page now, where we're doing the login view model. We've done that now for the most part. So now the base page of the login page, we open up these angle brackets and we pass in the type login view model, and that's now the generic class. So this base page now is a base page of type login view model. So now we'll have a public property that's of type VM, so effectively of type login view model for this login page. So now if we did here this dot view model, you'll see it actually knows it's a login view model. It's not just a random type because it's hard coded there, so it can resolve when it knows. So now this login page, we've got a view model property that's of this type, which is, you know, one of the uses of generics. So we've done it there. We now need to also specify it in the XAML, because you also declare in your XAML what type it is, and right now it just says it's a base page. Well, it's not a base page, it needs to have the type. So you do this x:type parameters, local : because this local here is Fasetto.word namespace, and our login view model is in the Fasetto.word namespace. So we're telling it it's in here, and the name is this login view model. So it's local : login view model, and that should now resolve, and I think should build. Yes, that's now built. So we've effectively changed this base page to a generic base page, which can now have a view model passed in, which then automatically sets up the page for the data binding to this view model. So before we go in and bind the rest, we've already bound the command, which was actually the hardest one to do, but we've done it already. We've just specified a button to have, oh, not that one, where am I? This one. The button to have a command bound to the login command, and we've also passed the parameter of the password text box. So let's run that, click the button, and we should hit this function here. So there we go, and you can see the parameter should be, yep, the secure string of the password box, which is nothing because we haven't typed anything. Let's type something. You see there's nothing. I'm guessing you just can't tell from that because it's obviously a secure password. So now we need to decrypt this password. You need to get it into, you know, well, yeah, we do, because when you pass it to your server, you need to know the actual password they typed. But also we want to just make sure this is working right. So let's just create a new folder called security. We'll do secure string helpers, and let's just be a static class. Helpers for it's going to be using system.security. Helpers for the secure string class, and this is going to be fun to try and remember. We want a public static string, because we need the string. We'll call it unsecure, because that's what we're doing. We'll pass in this secure string, and this just means it's an extension method. So if we have a secure string, we can just do secure string dot and then call unsecure. So we'll call this the secure password. Give it a description. Unsecures a secure string to plain text. A secure string. So first we want to check we've got one. So yeah, secure string is null. Return, I guess, string.empty, because there's, you know, they don't know that it's there. So make sure we have a password. Well, a secure string doesn't need to be a password, it can be anything. Should probably rename that. And then we need a unmanaged string, because this is going to be allocated in a special way. So it's it needs to be an int pointer in memory. Then we need to try, because we need to clean up regardless. So we're not going to actually catch any errors. We're going to like crash if there is an error. But because we're now going to be doing some memory allocation here, whatever happens, even if it crashes, we need to make sure we clear up after ourselves. So to clear up, you just do marshal, control dot to find the namespace. Marshal dot 03, which one is it? It's the global alloc Unicode, I think. This is just purely off memory, so you can always Google this, but I'm pretty sure this is right. Unmanaged string. So clean up any memory allocation. Allocation's 1L, I think. Is it? No, it's 2 L's. So that clears it up, and then we want to get the unmanaged string. Yeah, we want to set the unmanaged string to I think there's a helper in here, secure string to we want the global alloc Unicode, I think. So, and that'll take the secure string. So this unsecures the password, and then we want to return effectively the pointer to that string in memory, so that it returns as a string. It looks like a normal string in C#, but it's really a pointer to a, well, it is basically a string. We just allocated it in memory a different way. So it's a pointer to a string, and we made it Unicode, and the pointer is the unmanaged string. I think that's it. So again, you don't really need to understand this. I wouldn't worry about this. This just takes the secure string and then uses the marshalling to set the actual password to a location in memory, and then we convert that location in memory to a string, which is what we return. So it's a bit more like C++ code and lower level stuff. You really don't need to worry about this. But there's your unsecure function. So now in here we know the parameter is a secure string, and now on that secure string we can do dot unsecure, and it's found our helper method, which you can see is this one. Because we did this, it allows us to do the actual secure string dot and then unsecure. So let's just first test that works. Put a breakpoint there, run, and let's just type a password. 1, 2, 3. Dope. Okay, that didn't work. So, oh, I know why. I think we bound to. Yeah, you can't do this. You can't bind to the secure password, because then this is, like we mentioned, this is the issue. You can't bind to the secure password. So we're going to have to obfuscate that a little more. Let's make a view model base. Yeah, let's add an interface. We'll call it IPassword, and this is going to be just a interface. So an interface for a class that can provide a secure password, and this will just have a secure string. I will call it secure password, and it's just a getter. So you'll see why we do this in a minute. So now that we want this view, this page, to provide that password, because eventually our view model, the login view model, should never reference the actual view. So this should never have a reference to anything in WPF. Now we broke that in the main view model, the window view model, by passing in the actual window. But this is sort of a very unique view model. This was to make that custom window. So although it's 90% valid view model, you really shouldn't pass in any references, because now this is stuck to a WPF. This view model can no longer be used anywhere but in WPF. So don't sort of take this as gospel. But in general, when this application grows, we're going to move these login view models and all view models into a core project that has no reference to WPF. So we can't pass in, say, a password box here, because then you can't move this then becomes dependent on WPF. And the whole point of view models is there's no dependency to the view. It knows information about how a view should be, but it doesn't know anything about specific views. So we should not reference a password box. We can reference secure string because that's just in a .NET library. So what we're going to do, this will be in WPF because it's the actual view, and we want this to do the work of passing in the secure string. but we still want to do it in like a way of binding. So now instead of binding to the password text, to then have to bind to its property, let's bind to this page. So let's call element name page, and let's just name the whole page. So let's do x.name and just call it page. So now we've bound the command parameter is bound to the page, and the page now we want to implement I have password, so that in the view model we know what we've passed in at least implements this I have password. I just press Control and dot to then generate this for me. So the secure password for this view or this login page, and then here we want to return. Well, we don't need to return it, so we just need to say. So we named the password box password text, so it's just password text dot secure password, and that's then, this is like a new C#7 I believe it is way of doing the same as this, making a public getter property, which would then be like, you know, return something like that anyway. But basically it replaces this need to do a getter at all. If you just do that, it actually turns into, as you can see, a public property that's only a getter. So now the login page inherits I have password, and that has this property here, and then when it's called we actually get the secure password. So if we boil down to the view model again, the parameter now we're expecting to be an I have password, because we passed in, as you see here, we passed in the page, which is this page, which is implementing this interface. So that boils down to being an I have password as the parameter. It's basically the login page, but we shouldn't know about the login page, we only know about the password. And then on that we should have the secure password property, and then we can unsecure it. So that should now work, because now we're using the login page at the point in clicking that button to then ask for the password. And then there we go, 1, 2, 3. So the reason it didn't work when we bound to the secure password is because binding happens at the point when you do the binding. So when we bound to the password, secure password field, at the point we bound when we opened the application, there was no password. And because it's not a view model bindable property, the secure string is just that. It doesn't notify you when it's changed. When we typed a new password in, the secure password never come back and told us it changed, so we only ever had the first value. Now we're binding to the actual page itself, that never changes. So we're bound to the page, and then when we do this secure password, all it does is goes to the I have password of the login page, and then it runs this at that point in time to then get the password at that moment in time. So if you put a breakpoint on here and a breakpoint on the action here, and we run, you'll see nothing hits that get password, but when we click the get password, well, we click the login button, it then asks the login, well, the login view model now wants to get the parameter, which as you can see is the login page, its secure password. So you run over, and you can see then it's now asking for the secure password at this point in time. And then once you do that, we decrypt it. So that's now the password field bound. That was the hard work. By the way, you'd never do this either. You'd never just take a secure password and unsecure it into just a bog standard variable. This was just to show you the password. Do not do this. If you're doing an unsecure, make sure it's always being passed into the function that's then going to send it to the web server. So it's never stored in a variable. Just never store an unsecured password. So, well, let's leave that in for now. The other ones are now easy. We want to bind to the email. So go back to the login page. We don't need that now. Go to the email and just do text, binding, and email. And remember, this now will look for binding. It'll step up the tree. So this doesn't bind to anything, this doesn't bind to anything, this doesn't bind, this doesn't bind. It gets to the very top, which is where it will stop. And because our base page which is this base page. On construction, creates the view model, and then the view model, when getting sets the data context. This is now the binding. This is the binding for this page. So it's the login view model. So then here, because nothing else going up binds anything explicit to a new data context, then this binding is relating to the login view model. So then we want the email that's on the login view model, which is this. So again, if we put a breakpoint here, we do var email equals this.email, just for clarity, and we run this, and we'll type some lovely real email address, and you can see there's the email. So we've now got the email and the password, and all that's left to do is actually log in. So we've bound to the email, we've bound to the password. Now we want to run an action. Now you'll see that this is an asynchronous task because it can take time. Then when you're logging in, it's not instant. You've got to ask the server, you've got to wait an indefinite amount of time, and then you've got to actually do something. So what I tend to do on view models is you want a flag, so like a public boolean called, and really for each command. So we want to know, say, this command is running, if you're logging in, if you will, if you're in the middle of trying to log in. So we'll call it login is running, a flag indicating if the login command is running, because there's a few reasons why. If we open this now and we click the next button, it's going to run this action. Now it's not going to wait for this action because our command is basically going to call our action. It's not going to await the action. It doesn't know it's an awaitable action. It's just going to call the action. And then because we have made it asynchronous here and we've awaited it here, that's fine, but the actual button click doesn't await this. So we could click the button, this action could start running, and if we did a delay of 3,000, well, let's do 5, so it's 5 seconds, and we just put a breakpoint and we run, and what I'm going to do is going to click the button, say 3 times, and you'll see I can do that. It's going to let me do that, and it's going to run this action 3 times. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then you'll see now we'll hit this when that time has run out. We hit once, we hit twice, we hit 3 times. So that's not what you want. If somebody's logging in and they click this button, you expect it to show like a spinner or something, and when you click it again, nothing happens. The standard way of doing a login. So we need to do that. So in order to start doing it in view model binding, and in general you'll find you need this in a lot of cases, you want really this login command to have at the start, say, let's do it manually, you'd say check if it's running already. So if login is running, and just return. So don't do anything. And then once you're in here, you do login is running equals true. So now you're running the action. When you're finished, you do login is running equals false. So that kind of fixes the issue. So if we run this and we put a breakpoint here, and then we click the button 3 times, you'll notice effectively it'll only hit once, because it'll hit once, this will get set to true, it'll wait, and then the next 2 clicks will hit this that's true and just return. So you can click 3 times and you'll only hit this once. And there we go. Now the issue with this is, what if something went wrong here? So throw new argument null exception, and this might crash the application because I think we're on the UI thread, but we'll find out. So if we now click, yes, we're going to complain. Yep, we're going to crash. So to stop that happening, because this, you're probably going to wrap these in exceptions and catch them anyway. So we just basically ignore the failure for now. So, oh wait, what's wrong? Oh yeah, see, it never hit. So if I now click it, it'll crash, but it's caught, so nothing's happened. But now what you'll find is, say you've recovered from this one-time issue, this was something like the web server timed out, you've never reset this value. So now when you click, it's always true. You're stuck in this permanent never being able to reset, because the only place you'll reset's here. Say this error happened once, like say the web server timed out. You're now never going to have the login button working, because it's permanently stuck as a, you know, a true. So what you could do is move this to outside the try, or rather all of this outside the try, say. And then you could move this login is running to a finally statement. And the finally runs regardless of it crashing or not. So this will always run even if we crash. So now you'll see if we run, it'll go into there, it'll crash, and then it'll hit false and reset it. So you see it resets. So then every time we click, it'll carry on trying. So that's the basic idea, is that when you start doing an action, you start running this login command, you want to flag that you're running it. That means that your UI, like the button, could also show a spinner while this is true. And then whatever happens, whether it finishes or not, you want to make sure you know when the function's finished. But instead of doing it manually like this, which is a bit nasty, we want to do this as like a helper function. So I'll use some expressions here now to do this. And this gets a little bit complicated. It's easy, but something don't think you'll have seen before. And again, I'll explain in a separate video. So we want to start with the base view model. We're going to add this as a function to the base view model. And we're going to put some command helpers here. And we're going to call this thing that we want to do run command. So we'll make it protected because it's only to be used inside the view model. It's asynchronous, going to be a task that you can await. We'll call it run command. Now we want to pass in something called an expression. And an expression is sort of a runtime thing that you can create an expression. You can create a function, if you will, almost in like this, say. And instead of it evaluating at this point in time, an expression takes this, and then at the point in time you want to run that expression, it runs at that point in time. So again, you'll see why in a moment. So it wants to be an expression. That just means, well, you don't want it running right now. You want it running when we, at the point in time we want to run it at runtime. It wants to be a function because we want to get some value, and we want to get a Boolean true or false, because we want to, and this will be the updating flag. We want to get if it's updating or not. And then we also want to set it at the same time. So we'll have a function, it's got a task we'll call action. Just get this fleshed out a minute. This will be runs a command if the updating flag, as in login is running, if the updating flag is not set. So we're doing what we just did manually, but this is a better way of doing it. Is not set. Runs a command if the flag is not set. If the flag is true, the function is already running, or in this case indicating that. Then the action is not run. If the flag is false, indicating no running function, then the action is run. Then once the action is finished, if it ran, then the flag is reset to false once done. Oh well, we've already said that at the end. So you know what it's doing because we've showed you. This is the Boolean property flag defining if the command is already running, and then the action to run if the and it is not already running. So we want to check if the flag property is true, meaning the function is already running. And that is a simple case of, well, it's fairly simple. So it's updating flag. This is an expression, so you can do, basically it's a lambda expression because we will pass in fact, let me show you how I intend to use it. So what we'll end up with here is we want to do await run command, which we've started doing there, but I'll show you what it looks like. We're going to do a lambda expression like this, and we want to pass in this dot login as running. So the thing we're passing in the expression is this, but if we pass this in directly, then we can't edit this value as well. So even though we're passing in, we're not passing in a boolean here, even though it looks like we are, we're passing in an expression, like the whole thing, that will actually allow us to extract this property and set it. So it's a cool way of being able to set and get properties, because you can't pass properties as reference. You can't do like ref. So it's basically like doing a ref, but this is how you can do it on a property, because the view model needs a property. So we pass in this lambda expression. So we know this expression is a lambda expression. We could even change it to lambda expression there. If I could spell right. Lambda. Yeah, it should be right. Lambda. Wonder if Visual Studio's just, I think that's just not smart enough to detect it at the minute. Oh, because it's yeah, you can't have a, yeah, leave it as expression. We want this, we'd compile the expression. So this is like a runtime compile to turn it into the function. So at this point in time now we've basically just got a function that's going to return a boolean. And then you can invoke that function to get the value. So this will take this, compile it into just this, and then invoke it to effectively just get the property. So that's how you do the getting the property. That's, you know, get the property value. Instead of putting this here, let's just move this into a helper function. So did we make an expressions helper? No. Okay, let's make a new folder. And again, don't worry too much about fully understanding this, because I'm going to do a separate video on expressions, but I'll try and at least explain it so it's useful, so you can at least follow what's going on. Make a new helper class, a helper for expressions. Then we'll do a public static. We don't know the type, because we're going to do a generic type of get property value of that type. This is going to be the expression of a function of whatever type we decide. So basically it's the same thing we're passing in. And that is going to be the lambda. And then we just return the lambda and then paste that. So all that's done is moved. We've got an expression of a function of, in this case, a boolean. We've turned it into a generic function that's exactly the same, but can be of any type. It can be a string, an object, a class, and we just compile and invoke it. So this just simply compiles an expression and gets the function's return value. This is the type of return value and the expression to compile. So all that does is takes this expression of a function, which is here, and gets the value. So it gets the login as running value. So if the login is running, as we mentioned when we did it in here, if login was running, we just return. So if the updating flag dot get property value is true, then do nothing. So that's that bit. That's the first bit of the logic. Then if not, we want to set the login is running like we did. So now this is where it gets fun. So now we want to set the property flag to true to indicate we are running. And in order to do that, it's a little bit more tricky. So we'll do updating flag dot set property value, and we want to set it to true in this case. We now need to go and make this property, this method rather. So it's a little bit longer than this one. It's going to be a public static void. We don't return anything. Set property value of type t. This expression of a function of t, and that's the lambda, sets the underlying properties value to the given value from an expression that contains the property. This is the type of value to set and the expression. So first we need to get the expression, and this is going to be, we know it's a lambda expression as I mentioned, because that's the only thing we're passing in, is this is a lambda expression, because that's just what it is. So first we want to convert that to an expression equals, and it's basically going to be the lambda we passed in. We called it a lambda even though it's currently just expression, as lambda, there we go, lambda expression. So it's, we know it's a lambda expression, so we cast it to that, and then we need the underlying expression here, which is a member expression. So it's going to be the body of that expression as a member expression. So this converts a lambda sum.property to sum.property. So basically it gets rid of the lambda and turns it into a property about this member, about sum.property. Then from that expression we need to get the information about the property, because the only way we can set this property now is through reflection. So get the property information so we can set it. So property info is property info of the and the expression member. So the member of the expression is the property itself, because that's the member. So we get the member like that, and then we need the class that this member is on, which, because we passed in this here, we can get that. We know what class this is on, so we'll call that the target. That is the passed in lambda. We compile that and we dynamic invoke that. So we invoke it at runtime. That will be the target itself. And again, I'll explain this a lot more in depth in a separate video. And now we can use the property info to set the value. And it's the target, so the class it come from. And then the value we want, which is the value passed in. Where's the value? Oh, we haven't passed the value in yet. So So we also need to pass the value of type t in so we know what we're setting. The value to set the property to. Value. Set the property value. And I'll just debug through this so you can see what's happening. So that wasn't too bad, it's actually quite small, but we can now call the run command, which has the updating flag which we've passed in, and then the action to run. So then we want to actually run an action. We want to be asynchronous as before, pass it in, move all that into there, and it becomes now this. So what will happen if we run, and we'll step through this nice and slow, and it's fairly simple, but like I say, don't worry, I'll do a complete video on just expressions so you understand it more, but you know what it's trying to do. So you click next, it hits this, goes to run command. Right now login is running as false, so if we put a little flag on there, we go into here, this is going to ask for the property, so it's going to compile, and you see it's trying to get the property, and there's it's compiling. It's false, so this will continue. So now it's going to set the property. So if we step into that, we can see the lambda we passed in, you can see is there. So you can see it's easier to see there. So there's the lambda, open, close, and then it's the value of the login view model dot login is running. That's how it's come about. That is a lambda expression, and the body of that expression we can see here is just the value itself, as I mentioned, the sum.property. So we're taking the lambda with the outer quotes, which you can see there, and we're stripping it out and getting the body as a member expression, and now it's just the inner expression, the value of that property. So that's what we've done there. We've removed the outer lambda part here and got the expression. Then we want that expression's member is now the actual login is running boolean. That's the actual property itself, is the member. So we want to get that, and we want to get it, cast it to property info, which is what that is. So now we've got the information about the property. From that, we compile the lambda itself, which is then going to run the whole thing. We've got the target. Oh no, sorry, it's not that. It is we want the lambda expression. Expression dot get. What is it? Expression dot just lambda. So we want the lambda from the expression dot expression. So it takes this part and then converts that to a lambda and invokes it to like I say, I'll explain why, but that will get the target. So let's just start that again. Click the button, go into there. We know that now works. Tries to get, it carries on. Now it wants to set the property. We get the property info. We now get the target, which is the login view model. And now we've got the login view model, and we've got the info about login is running. And we can now simply say property info, the target's the login view model, which currently has login is running false, set it to true. And now if we look at the target again, it's now been set to true. So all that's done is, so far, gone, is login running? If it is, don't carry on because it's already running. Otherwise, set it to true. So after that, we now want to do what we were doing before. We want to try running the action they've passed in. So try running the action, and we can await it because it's a function of a task, so it's basically an awaitable action. And we don't want to mask any errors, we want to let them bubble up, so we just do a finally, and this will, let's comment this, run the past in action, and then finally set the property flag back to false. Now it's finished. So now we just do updating flag dot set property value false. So it's doing exactly what we did manually, but now it's wrapped it up in this single run command that we can now call without having to constantly do this.login is running true, this.login is false, try, finally. It basically wraps all this up in a nice clean run command function. So we can just then call, we now do this. You can see we can now just do await run command, login as running, and then do this. And now what this command will do is every time you come into login, it will flag that as true, run the command and flag it as false. If it's already running, then basically this just doesn't even run. So you'll see we'll hit that. Well, in fact, if we click there, yeah, let's just click there and there. Let's run this, and you'll see I'll click the button once, we'll hit here, and then if I click it again, you'll see it just never runs until this finishes. So I'll click there, we hit that, run, and now I'll just keep clicking. You can see nothing happens. And then when it finishes, it will be reset to false, and I'll click again, and it'll start again. And the benefit here now as well is, while this login is running and doing something, you've got this permanent login is running view model bindable property. So now what we can do with this login is running is we can bind it to this button and have this button showing like a spinner. So by complete automation of just the binding, you can have it so when you click this button and it's bound to this command, it will then spin, and when it finishes it will then go back to the normal text. So let's go ahead and do that. First, I noticed there's a sign up that keeps bugging me. It's this sign in page. Next is also now going to be login. So we've got that. We've got the view model. Let's think this through. We now need an attach property for this button because we need to know if the button's busy or not, let's say. In fact, we'll improve the style of all the buttons in terms of the standard button. So where is it? Regular button. So in here we want a new attach property. Thanks to the previous video, we can do attach properties really easy. So copy and paste that, button attach property, get rid of that, and then we'll just call it is busy property. I don't need the helper that we added for the last one either. And this is busy, and it's a boolean. The is busy attach property for anything that wants to flag if the control is busy. And that's all there is to making an attach property, thanks to this base attach property. And then we want to use that. We already used it in text somewhere, so has text, there we go. Let's copy that, paste it into here, just so I don't have to keep remembering all the syntax. Is busy property value, by default it's not busy. So now all regular buttons will have a yes, it does exist, it just hasn't compiled. It's going to have an is busy flag, and then by default it's false. So what we'll do for now is, let's get this, what we're going to do is add we're going to add a little spinner over the top. So instead of just having the text, which is here, let's just for now make a grid, plonk this inside the grid, make another text block, and we want the visibility, which we've also done again in the text thing, this visibility. We make this text block visible to is busy value. Boolean to visibility converter we need to edit, because right now by default if the value is true we make it hidden, otherwise it's visible. So we want to make use of the parameter. If the parameter is null, so we keep the standard behavior for wherever else we're using it. Otherwise, if we pass any parameter in, we're going to return the opposite. So it's like a way of toggling whether the boolean's true or false, like inverting the boolean. Because in this case, if we're busy, we want it visible. So basically, if it's true, we want it to be visible. So that's what this is going to do. So we flip them around, and then we just pass in a converter parameter, and just, it doesn't need to say true, it can be anything. We've only checked if it's null or not. So the text block here will be visible when we're busy. We'll set the text to busy, say. What are you moaning about now? Oh yeah, it just needs compiling, I think. And then this text, the main one, we're going to do the opposite. So get rid of the converter parameter. We want that to be visible when it's not busy, invisible when it's busy. So I think that should compile. I think it's just complaining because it's not compiled yet. What are you complaining about? Can't resolve property is busy local. Yes, you can. Okay, maybe we just need to compile before we. Is busy property. Yep, that's all fine. Okay, maybe we just need to compile before this thing will allow us to use it. Yes, it does. Okay. We just got clean solution, build solution. Is busy. Am I missing something here? Is busy. Oh, property. Yeah, of course, the word property. Is busy property. There we go. So if we just run this, I think I've done it again there. Yep. I need to. Is busy property. Run that again. So now, when we're not busy, we should see the text, and when we click it, that didn't work very well. Is busy property. Oh yeah, we're not changing is busy yet. We need to actually bind is busy. So now we've got the attached property. That's effectively just going to now listen out for this this value. We go to the button itself, which is here, and we now bind the attached property as a binding to our view model of login is running. Now the button will be busy if the login is running. So now we should see the text change from login to busy, hopefully. Yeah, there we go. And then after 5 seconds, that'll go back to login. There we go. So now we want to change this awful looking text to a spinner, and that's our sort of we're busy, wait till we finish type appearance. So is busy. We've done all that. We now want to make sure this is aligned the same as these. For one, let's at least fix that. The font family. Now, in order to do the spinner, I'm going to use, there's a load of ways of doing it again. Really easy way of doing it. Go to Font Awesome. So in web design, you tend to do fonts for a lot of your icons, and Font Awesome is a very popular one. So just go to Font Awesome, click download, get the regular one, open up the file, go to the fonts folder, get the TTF, extract it to anywhere, just go to desktop, go back to your solution in your fonts folder where we've got the other fonts, add the existing item, and then go to desktop or wherever you put it, add the Font Awesome, go to your styles for the fonts, copy and paste the other one, Font Awesome. This is going to be Font Awesome. So now we can use that font. We can now set this other font, the busy font, to Font Awesome. And we want to Font family, template binding, font family. No. Static resource, font awesome. We've got the fonts, so that's fine. Now if we go back to the fonts, go to icons, search for spinner, which is there, right click and inspect, and then you can see in here, you'll see an eye. If you expand the eye and click the before, you'll see there F110 is the specific value, so that's the one we need to use, and then we'll get this nice icon, a vector icon. So the text, instead of being busy, wants to be and hash what is it now? And hash X and then the number F110 semicolon, and that's like your special way of doing the text. So if we run this, we should now see, I think, the spinner icon, and there you go. So already we've got a nice spinner. We just want that spinning. So let's just now make that spin. So we'll do that with a new text style. We want to make a new style. Let's minimize everything. Target type is going to be type text block. X key is going to equal spinning text based on, and I'm just copying this one here. I'm just looking at the standard, what I'm doing there, static resource, base text block style. So there's your base text. We want a storyboard to animate, so style.resources, what is it, storyboard, make a key for it so we can access it. We'll call this spin. Just want a simple double animation for rotating. Storyboard.target property is it's the UI element dot render transform, because it's an attached property, dot and then another attached property, rotate transform dot angle. I think that gets basically the angle of the render transform that we're going to do. Want to go from 0 to 360. Want a full spin. We'll make it take 2 seconds. You can change that to whatever you like, and we want it to repeat forever. So I think it's literally as forever or something. Forever. So there's the animation to spin a render transform indefinitely. And now we want to trigger that when it's visible. So it starts the animation. So in triggers, you want a data trigger. You want binding as relative binding, or relative source rather, is the relative source dot self. So bind to yourself, basically, because we're in a style trigger. We need to get back to the text block. So we're a relative source to ourself. We want the path to be is visible. The property on that is visible, and the value to be triggered when it's true. So when we are visible, then we want to data trigger dot interaction. So when it's is visible, we begin the storyboard. The name we'll call spin storyboard, and the storyboard itself that we want to begin is the spin one we just made. And then we want copy and paste that, exit actions, begin, and then remove storyboard, begin storyboard name as spin storyboard. So basically when it goes visible, we start spinning forever. When it goes invisible, we stop the animation just so it's not running. Oops, we need to apply that style as well. Just stop that. So while we're in here spinning text, we might as well apply the actual properties as well. So let's do the property of the property of font family, value of static resource, font awesome. We want the property text. And that value will be the hash xf1110. So that's the spinner icon. And then we want, in order to apply a render transform like this, we need to actually have a render transform. So we need to set one here. Well, we'll have to set that on the actual text box, or we will do anyway, just for quickness. But we need to set the origin so it spins in the center. So it's render transform origin, value 0.5, 0.5. It's basically x and y, and it's from 0 to 1. So spin in the middle, that'll be. Got spinning text as a style. We go to the buttons. We need to add the texts to here because we need to reference the style for this box here. It's going to be static resource spinning text. We've now defined the font family. We define the text. The visibility is specific to that, so is this. And let's see if that works. I think I might have to define a render transform, but let's see if that now styles and animates when it's visible. No, so we need to define a render transform. So render transform, rotate transform, because that's what we're doing, and 0, I think. See if that works, because obviously you need to actually add the transform initially. There we go. So now it spins, and there's our loading animation while we're busy. And that's a nice way, and then you can click and nothing will happen until it's done. And then this could be doing your login. So let's move this off to the style so we don't have to do that for everyone. Go back to the text. So we should be able to do set a property, render transform, set a dot value, rotate transform. I think that'll still work. And there we go. So now we've got like a spinning text style that appears when we're busy, disappears when we're gone. We've got everything bound. The email and the password comes in through the parameter, through that function. We've got a nice spinning animation. We've got the entire login view model done, ready to actually just now do your actual login to the server here, and then do what you want after that. Again, a note: do not do this. Just do not place. In fact, I'll put an important. Never store unsecure password in a variable like this. So you'll see this will get removed after. But now you've got a nice little run command we can do on any action, any method or command that we want to run, and effectively it'll set a flag that we can then bind to do things like the button showing and spinning. You could do whatever you wanted with that. You know, is busy, you could disable the button as well. So you could actually go is enabled, bind to login is running, and that's the opposite way around, I think, obviously, isn't it? If it's running, it's enabled. So we need to just do an inverted boolean there, which I can't be bothered to do at the minute, but you get the example, you just make a value converter to flip that around, and then you could have it, you know, disabling as well. But I prefer it just to stay the colour it is and just show that it's busy. I don't like sort of disabled buttons. I like them to stay functional. They just clear that, you know, it's busy doing something. So I think that's really it for this video. We've done some real world view model binding. So we're bound to the email, we're bound to the password, and you've seen how to get around something a bit out of the ordinary for view model binding. So we've never bound to this directly, yet we've still done it with view model binding because we've used the button with a command and a command parameter, which we've bound to the page, and then in the page we've added a property that we implemented with an interface. So it's like a real world example, because view models never just work as they are. There's always exceptions, like you've seen with the password text. It's a good way of seeing how they actually come together and really work. So I'll try and do another video soon, but hopefully this one was helpful. The next one will probably be on generics and expressions, and then we'll jump back into doing the register page and then getting onto the main application page, showing the, you know, start doing some chat bubbles and things like that. So hopefully you enjoyed this one. Any comments or requests, or as usual, if you want to know something you don't understand or something you want to do in the next video or anything, just leave the comments and I'll get back to you.